Good afternoon and welcome to the April Q&A lunch hour with Jason Killeen. I'm your host, Jason Killeen. I just want to welcome everybody to this month's Q&A session. There are a lot of legislative things moving around right now. The mayor transmitted her proposed budget on Monday, so the city is going to begin budget deliberations on her proposed budget. Additionally, there are motions related to updated DCR fees, land use requirements, different cannabis related policies, and council is considering a motion related to special events and on-site consumption. So I don't have a lot of information to share with folks at this moment, but there are a lot of moving pieces, and I expect that in future months we'll have a lot of questions related to some of those policies. So welcome to this month's edition, and let's get started with the questions.
Good afternoon. First question from Henry Y. Who regulates hemp?
At the local level, the Los Angeles Municipal Code defines hemp as a subdivision of cannabis. So the Office of Finance would be responsible for tax collection of hemp related sales. And because hemp is a subproduct of the definition of cannabis, in order to lawfully sell hemp related products, folks would have to have a license issued by the Department of Cannabis Regulation. At the state level, there's a few agencies that deal with it. The California Department of Food and Agricultural deals with crops and hemp related products used for agricultural purposes. The state has a definition of industrial hemp for cannabis related plants that don't meet the definition of industrial hemp. Hemp is cannabis, so it would require licenses by the Department of Cannabis Control. And for hemp that's ingested, the California Department of Public Health would be the regulatory agency. So there's a number of local and state agencies that regulate hemp. If it's just hemp, it falls under most definitions of cannabis. If it's industrial hemp, then there's a step of definition and factors that have to be integrated, but at the local level, it's all the same.
Thank you. Moving on to question from Elvia H. I was verified in 2022 and my Excel record indicates this. How do I make sure I will be part of the upcoming lottery?
So the lottery registration will open up late summer, early fall. When it opens up, anybody with a verified status from 2019, 2022, or 2025 will have the opportunity to register for the lottery. So as long as your status reflects that you were verified, when the lottery registration period opens, you'll have to log into the DCR licensing portal and then create your lottery record and submit it for consideration.
Our next question from Thomas A. The Cannabis Regulation Committee meetings have been canceled due to no quorum. Is this expected going forward?
I mean, meetings do get canceled from time to time due to a lack of quorum. Currently, we only have 4 commissioners on the Cannabis Regulation Commission. So if we lose 2 commissioners or they're unable to attend, then we won't have quorum to hold a meeting. As part of the regular commission activities, commissioners do announce absences in advance. And sometimes from time to time, folks have personal emergencies or are unable to attend. What DCR is doing is we are only scheduling new commercial cannabis cases for the first meeting of the month, so that in the event a meeting does get canceled, those cases would just shift to the second meeting of the month, and there wouldn't be a domino effect affecting future cases to be considered by the Cannabis Regulation Commission. I know our commissioners are volunteers. 2, they're very diligent and they care about what they do. So if we don't have quorum, generally it's because somebody had an emergency and they aren't able to attend, and we apologize for that. But things do come up and meetings will get canceled from time to time, unfortunately.
Again, another question from Thomas A. What can I, as a prospective SE applicant, expect in terms of license application turnaround times?
Um, Annual license applications can be turned around in 30 to 90 days. But for most folks, it takes 90 to 180 days because folks don't pay all of the required fees at the front end of the process. So they pay a portion of the fee. We process up to that point. We invoice them for the remainder of the fees. They have up to 30 minutes to pay. And until the fees get paid, we don't continue working on the application. So if you have all of the documents ready to go and all of the fees are paid at the front, we could get it processed in 30 to 90 days. But if you are paying your fees in increments based on when we get to different activities and services, it would most likely take 90 to 180 days.
This following question comes from an individual with the initials AN. With my renewal date coming up in June, if I turn my attestation in now, will I make it in time before renewal is due?
The local renewal cycle begins in September. So if you have a June renewal date, I have to assume that you're talking about your state license. I would recommend reaching out to the Department of Cannabis Control because none of DCR's licenses expire in June. All of them expire at the end of the calendar year.
Question from Jesus E. What are my rights since my associate has not given me my share of the profits after a year and a half in business?
That sounds like a business dispute and a dispute over the distribution of profits from the business entity. DCR doesn't get involved in business disputes and we can't provide legal advice. I would recommend you reach out to a lawyer to see what your options are.
A question from Jose P. and Brandon B. Can the license fee have a waiver or a reduction for low-income social equity applicants?
Based on the availability of grant funds, DCR has been able to provide fee waivers from time to time. The California Equity Grant will be used as a source for annual license application fees and some license renewal fees for verified social equity applicants. But DCR does not have fee waivers or a prorated fee structure based on somebody being low income.
Our next question from Jose P. Does DCR have a 1-800 hotline for any questions that cannot be answered through the portal?
DCR does not have a 1-800 number, but the department's general line is 213-978-0738. And staff will answer the phone between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday each week.
Question from Brandon B. When will there be another social equity application window?
The social equity individual applicant verification window opened earlier this year and is now closed. We're processing those verification requests currently. We're going to do a lottery registration late summer, early fall, and we plan to conduct a lottery for the remaining Type 10 retail storefront application opportunities in December. That's the plan for the remainder of this year. At this point, I don't have anticipated opening dates for any activity in 2026, but good question.
From Robert C. Are there still licenses available?
Yes, there are several license types that are available. The retail storefront Type 10 the non-storefront delivery type 9 and the cultivation licenses are exclusive to social equity applicants through December 31st of 2025. But general applicants and social equity applicants can still apply for manufacturing, distribution, and testing labs. And for folks that are already verified as social equity individual applicants, they have the ability to apply for the Type 9 non-storefront delivery. And we anticipate having a lottery for the Type 10 retail storefront applications in December of 2025. Cultivation, I'm not sure how that's going to be handled yet. We're working through some of the updates to the environmental review process so that folks have the opportunity to get through the building and safety, fire plan, and DWP plan checks that are required because the state is not issuing provisional licenses to any applicant for that activity. So we want to make sure that if we do accept an annual license application from an applicant, they're going to be able to navigate at least the local process timely so that they can get a license from the state to begin their operations. So stay tuned for cultivation.
Question from Philip A. What is the next step in the application process following the local compliance underway?
If you haven't already, you'll have to, pay for the environmental review fees. The department would begin preparation of your environmental review document once we've made a determination of what type of environmental analysis would be necessary. We either complete that analysis in-house or we have to contract that out to an environmental consultant. And at some point, you will have all of the documents and information necessary to get to a notice of complete application. And then from that point, it's 90 days for us to conduct a community meeting and public hearing before the cannabis regulation for the retail storefront applications. And then we have 90 days to finalize our review for the non-storefront ones. So after local compliance underway, you're working towards getting to a notice of complete application. And at that point, DCR would then be making a final determination of whether or not you've met the requirements to receive a license.
From Philip A. What agency issues the metric number and at what step in the application process is the metric number issued?
The state is responsible for metric. So the California Department of Cannabis Control administers the metric program. So I would recommend reaching out to them.
From Stephen C. I am a Phase 3 retail social equity individual applicant. Our project is stalled at the local compliance underway stage, and my partners want to disengage. If I abandon the application at this stage, can I request an entity substitution? Can I also request a relocation?
If the record is abandoned, when you attempt to refile, we'll make a determination of whether the original application was deemed filed. If the original application was deemed filed and you had not previously refiled, you would have an opportunity to submit a new address, either within the community plan area that you originally applied under or another community plan area that has not reached undue concentration. You cannot do any type of entity substitution as part of the refiling process. So you would have to refile as the original entity.
A follow-up from Stephen C. Can a Phase 3 license be abandoned with a right to refile at the local compliance underway stage? And actually, it's sort of a repeat. Trying to see if there's another part that is missing. I think it's the same, so I'll move on. Antonio S. Is there any resources out there for social equity license holders like myself that is having a difficult time finding an investor or partner to pay for application fees, lease for a building?
I heard a portion of the earlier question that was talking about refiling at the local compliance and waste part, any refiled application starts at the beginning of the process. So once we determine a record is eligible for refiling, it would have to go through the pre-application review process. If the location is deemed eligible for further processing, then you would be able to submit an annual license application. But you don't get to pause and then come back into the process where you used to be in the process. You have to start all the way over. With that, I will ask you to repeat the current question.
Sure. Thank you for that. Antonio S. Are there any resources out there for social equity license holders who are having a difficult time finding an investor or partner to help pay for application fees or lease for a building, etc.?
So I would recommend logging into the learning management system. There are resources on the learning management system about investors, how to make a business pitch, and creating presentations. Separately, the social equity team normally does one or two events every year. And, not only do social equity applicants attend those events, but prospective investors may also attend those events with the hope of matching up with a prospective applicant. That would also be a good way of trying to find somebody. But DCR does not do any matchmaking, nor do we try to link anybody up with investors or landlords that are willing to lease to a cannabis business. Again, that falls under the umbrella of providing business or legal advice, which the department does not do.
From Antonio S. He asks, what is the actual timeline after our address gets approved and there is an updated zoning area where we can look for locations?
From the date a pre-application record is deemed eligible for further processing, the business has up to 1 year to submit their annual license application. Separately, the zoning articulated in LAMC section 105 are the zones that we can currently consider cannabis applications. We are working with the Government Operations Committee. We are reporting back to them and making a recommendation to allow cannabis businesses to go to the Department of Building and Safety for them to review the activities and make a determination whether or not those activities could be accommodated in one of the zones that are not articulated in LAMC 105. But again, currently DCR can only consider applications in the zones that are articulated in LAMC section 105.
Another question from Antonio S. Oh, sorry, let me move on. Eugene M. If my distributor license is not expired, can I still pay to renew it at this time?
One of two. So this may be conflating a local license with a state license. Local licenses run for the calendar year. So they run from January 1st or from the date issued through 11:59 p.m. on December 31st of that calendar year. So, either at this point, you either have an active local license or you have an expired local license. Our renewal process starts in early September. So you can't start the renewal process earlier than September. So you would not be able to renew at this time. If you're conflating the local license with the state license, I would reach out to the Department of Cannabis Control to see whether or not you meet all of their requirements to renew your license.
Question from Tyrone S. Will cannabis event organizer licenses be added to social equity license types?
The city council introduced a motion for DCR to report back on temporary special events and on-site consumption. And we will report back for that license type as part of that reporting process if the motion is adopted. At this time, there hasn't been a policy decision made, and DCR has not made any recommendations.
Again, from Tyrone S. Will you be accepting new applicants anytime soon?
We accept applications on a regular basis. Again, testing on volatile manufacturing, distribution, transport only. We accept those licenses from all applicants, or those application types from all applicants. For the type 9, we accept those applications from social equity applicants. And then for the retail storefront, the type 10, you have to be selected through a lottery in order to have an opportunity to select that application type through the end of the calendar
year. From Ariel J. When will temporary approval certificates for 2025 be issued?
Stay tuned. The team is finishing up the conversions for the folks that recently got through the local annual licensing process. And the intent is for annual licenses to be issued that show an operating status of temporary approval.
From Mike S. If the compliance team is requesting a diagram modification as a corrective action, should the licensee be charged a modification request form review fee of $542, in addition to the actual diagram document review fee of $489?
That question is best addressed by the compliance inspector working with the business. It's going to come down to whether or not things are going to be a paper-based and virtual review, or if it's going to require another on-site inspection. Without knowing the exact circumstance, I can't actually know what services folks would be invoiced for.
Let's see. Next question again from Mike S. In case where a licensee has done their part, but DCR has not yet filed the NOE prior to the DCC expiration date, does DCR have the ability to get in touch with DCC to let them know that the NOE is in the works and to allow the licensee to renew anyway? And let me know if you need me to repeat any part of that.
The DCR licensing supervisor meets with the Department of Cannabis Control on a weekly basis to discuss upcoming DCC expirations. So it can be discussed at that meeting, but DCR does not have the authority to instruct DCC to renew a license that the state says does not meet their requirements.
Let's see. The next question comes from Anahi T. When will non-retail, non-social equity applicants get their CEQA invoice? And how soon after payment will they get NOE on CEQAnet?
The invoices for folks that have not previously paid the environmental review fees should be issued in the next 2 weeks. If you're seeking to pay your fees, you can reach out to your analyst and they can generate an environmental invoice for you so you can pay them quickly. Once we've done our review, it's going to come down to whether or not the business qualifies for a categorical exemption and has to go through the community meeting public hearing process, or if we've completed the environmental review and then it comes to me for review and approval. That kind of will drive how quickly a notice of exemption could get filed. In order for a notice of exemption to be filed, you do have to qualify for a categorical exemption. Our consultants generally turn around their analysis within 30 to 60 days. So in most cases, your environmental review would be complete within 90 days if you qualify for the categorical exemption. And that includes the time to prepare the environmental report, file with the county clerk, get the document back from the county clerk, and then upload it to Sequanet. If you have to go through a public hearing, of course, doing the community meeting, doing the public hearing, will extend that time frame out at least 45 to 90 days.
Question from Joe E. When will verification notices be sent to new applicants if they qualify to apply in licensing opportunities?
I'm assuming the question was associated with the verification request that came in as part of the 2025 SEI verification process. Verification notices will be going out on a rolling basis. When you submitted your request, when you paid the fees, are going to drive when it gets assigned to an analyst. I know analysts are sending out cure emails for folks that need to submit additional information. And then, they're just processing them on an ongoing basis until they're all processed. But I would expect that some kind of notice would be sent out in the next 30 to 60 days.
From Anahi T. How do we navigate obtaining an operating permit? Does anyone have an operating permit, and can you get temporary approval before an operating permit?
In order to obtain an operating permit, you have to pass the final inspection. You can't request a final inspection until you have your building permits, your certificate of occupancy, fire permits, health permits all squared away. There are businesses that are close to being eligible to request a final inspection, but all of the other required permitting requirements have to be met before you can get the operating permit. Can you qualify for temporary approval before getting an operating permit? Maybe. The better question is, are you able to get a state license to operate and then meet the requirements to be granted temporary approval while you work towards getting your operating permit? And that's going to depend on the applicant, when the applicant applied, and what the specific factors are for that applicant. But there is a way to get temporary approval prior to being issued a operating permit.
Our next question comes from Tim A. If a licensee with temporary approval renewed their TA approval in 2024, but did not pay their annual license fee on time, when will the licensees with an active TA be able to reapply for annual licensure and get their CEQA NOE filed with the county?
So the licensing team is creating temporary application records for folks that had renewed temporary approval for calendar year 2025, but did not pay their annual license application fees because the annual those applications were abandoned. The TMP record will have a status of submit annual license application. Once you see that status, it'll give you an action button, and then you can submit your annual license application. You'll be invoiced for your annual license application fees, and we'll determine, what type of activity is what type of record, and then we'll start processing your annual license application. But you'll have to meet all of the requirements for annual licensure before um, we'll make a determination to issue an annual license. And only if we determine issuing an annual license where the commission approves the recommendation to issue an annual license would DCR actually file any environmental paperwork with other governmental agencies.
Our next question from Anahi T. When will undue concentration for cultivation be updated on the website map?
I would expect it to be updated by mid-May at this point. The DCR website just had a massive revision, and there's integration going on with the DCR licensing portal and LA Tax. So our systems folks are a little bit stretched out right now, but we will be pulling new sensitive use data at the beginning of May, and we'll be doing our routine update at that point. So I would expect by mid-May, there'll be updated undue concentration numbers posted.
And then from Ariella J, when will the milestones for certificate of occupancy operating permit compliance be updated in the rules and regulations?
The rules and regulations were recently updated. There are going to be some additional updates that will be made if some of DCR's policy recommendations are approved by the city council and become local law. But there are some updated milestones already posted in the rules and regulations. I know, again, our IT section and communications section have been doing a lot of work getting the website updated and working with the other agencies to make sure the links and everything else are working. So I would just check back on the website and you should be able to see some of the updates there.
From MS, what are the chances that an NOE can be filed with the county clerk today for a DCC license that expires in 3 days?
I would say unless it's already been transmitted to document services for delivery, it's a 0% chance of it happening today. I would reach out to the analyst for a more specific date because they would be the ones that would be making sure that all of the documents are prepared and submitted.
Just 1 second, Jason. I'm checking with staff to see if there are any additional questions. Bear with me a moment. Okay, I'm hearing none. I think we're done. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. And I just want to thank everybody for participating. Our next Q&A virtual lunch will take place on Wednesday, May 21st at noon. So look forward to answering more questions then. Bye.